Alright gamers, it's time to dive into some hidden gems that you absolutely need to experience. Today we're focusing on linear games, those tightly crafted experiences that take you on a guided journey from start to finish, often with compelling narratives and focused gameplay. These titles might not be the open world blockbusters everyone's talking about, but trust me, they're worth every second of your time. Without further ado, let's get started. First up, we've got Gate of Memories. Based on a tabletop RPG, this game throws you into a dark fantasy world that's both beautiful and unsettling. You can control two characters in the game, Ergo and the Bearer of Calamities. This dual character system isn't just a gimmick, it's central to both the gameplay and the story. The combat is fast-paced and fluid, reminiscent of Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, but with RPG elements layered on top. It takes some getting used to, but once you master it, pulling off combos and switching between characters mid-fight feels awesome. The world of Anima is where this game really shines. It's a place of dark magic, ancient secrets, and moral ambiguity. The art style is striking, with each area feeling distinct and memorable. From crumbling Gothic cathedrals to otherworldly realms, the environments are a joy to explore. The story is complex and mature, dealing with themes of identity, duty, and the nature of good and evil. It can be confusing at times, especially if you're not familiar with the Anima universe, but it's rewarding for those who invest in it. Gate of Memories isn't perfect. The voice acting can be hit or miss, and some of the platforming sections can be frustrating. But if you're looking for an RPG that's off the beaten path, with deep lore and challenging gameplay, this is definitely one to check out. Next up, let's talk about Child of Light. This game is like a playable fairy tale, and I mean that in the best way possible. The first thing that hits you is the visuals. It's like a watercolor painting come to life. Every frame could be hung on a wall, but Child of Light isn't just a pretty face. It's got substance to back up its style. You play as Aurora, a young princess trying to save her kingdom, and the story unfolds like a storybook, complete with dialogue written in rhyme. It could have been cheesy, but it's done so well that it adds to the fairy tale charm. The combat system is also worth mentioning. It's turn-based, but with a twist. There's a timeline at the bottom of the screen, and positioning on this timeline is crucial. It adds a layer of strategy that keeps battles engaging throughout the game. And let's not forget about Igniculus, your Firefly companion. Not only is he crucial in puzzles and exploration, but a second player can control him in combat, making this a great co-op experience. The soundtrack is hauntingly beautiful and perfectly complements the game's atmosphere. Child of Light is one of those rare games that appeals to both hardcore RPG fans and those new to the genre. It's a relatively short RPG, about 10 to 12 hours, but it's a journey well worth taking. Now, for something completely different, we have South Park: The Fractured But Whole. Even if you're not, the solid RPG mechanics make it worth checking out. This game takes everything that made the Stick of Truth great and cranks it up to 11. The premise is hilarious. The kids of South Park are playing superheroes, and of course, it spirals into a town-wide adventure. The attention to detail is insane. It looks and sounds exactly like an episode of the show, but you're in control. The combat system is where this game really shines. It's a grid-based tactical RPG, kind of like XCOM, but with fart jokes. And speaking of farts, they're not just for laughs, they're a crucial game mechanic. Only in South Park, right? The game pokes fun at superhero tropes, RPG conventions, and pretty much everything else in typical South Park fashion. It's crude, it's offensive, but it's also surprisingly smart in its satire. The writing is sharp, the voice acting is spot on, and the game is packed with references that'll delight fans of the show. Fair warning though, if you're easily offended, this might not be the game for you. But if you can handle South Park's brand of humor, then don't skip this. It's not often you find a licensed game that's this good, let alone one that stands on its own as a solid RPG. Next up, we have the Technomancer. Set on Mars long after human colonization, this action RPG throws you into a world of warring corporations, mutants, and of course, Technomancers, mages who can harness electricity. The first thing that will strike you about this game is its world building. The developers have created a rich, detailed universe that feels lived in and complex. The combat system is deep and satisfying too, allowing you to switch between 3 different fighting styles on the fly. You can be a staff-wielding warrior one moment and a knife-throwing rogue the next. And of course, there's the technomancy. Unleashing electrical attacks never gets old. The story is where the game really shines. It's a sprawling tale of political intrigue, personal discovery, and the struggle for survival on a harsh planet. Your choices matter, affecting not just the main story, but the fates of your companions as well. Speaking of companions, they're well written and have their own quest lines that are worth exploring. Now, I'll be honest, the game can be a bit rough around the edges. The animations aren't always smooth, and some quests can feel a bit repetitive. But if you can look past these flaws, you'll find a deep, engaging RPG that offers dozens of hours of gameplay. If you're a fan of BioWare's older games or the Gothic series, the Technomancer is definitely worth checking out. Next we have the Sexy Brutale. And don't let the name fool you. This game is one of the most unique puzzle experiences I've ever had. Picture this. You're at a masquerade party in a mansion, and you're stuck in a time loop where guests are being murdered over and over. Your job? Figure out how to save them. The art style is this gorgeous, cartoony take on 1920s aesthetics, and it's backed up by a jazzy soundtrack that perfectly sets the mood. And what really blew me away was the puzzle design. Each guest murder is a complex series of events, and you have to observe, learn, and intervene at just the right moment to save them. It's incredibly satisfying when you finally crack a case. And the story? It starts off quirky and fun, but as you unravel the mystery, it goes to some surprisingly deep and emotional places. This game is one of those games that proves you don't need a massive budget to create something truly innovative and memorable. If you're tired of the same old game mechanics and want something that'll really make you think, you owe it to yourself to check this one out. Next up, we've got Sea of Solitude. In the game, you play as Kay, a young woman who wakes up to find herself transformed into a monster in a submerged city. As you explore this waterlogged world, you encounter other monsters, each representing different aspects of loneliness and mental health struggles. The visual design of Sea of Solitude is striking. The world shifts between vibrant, sun-drenched scenes and dark, oppressive storms, mirroring Kay's emotional state. The monster designs are both beautiful and unsettling, each one a physical manifestation of inner turmoil. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of light platforming, puzzle solving, and exploration. You'll be navigating through the flooded city, avoiding danger, and trying to help the other monsters you encounter. Apart from this, the story of the game is quite unique. It deals with themes of depression, anxiety, and loneliness in a way that's both sensitive and impactful. The game doesn't shy away from difficult topics, but it presents them in a way that's relatable and ultimately hopeful. Sea of Solitude is more about the experience, the emotion, and the message it's trying to convey. If you're looking for a game that'll make you think and feel, maybe even help you process some of your own emotions, Sea of Solitude is definitely worth your time. Moving forward, we have Forgotten Anne. This is a visual feast with hand-drawn animations that look like a Studio Ghibli film come to life. You play as Anne, an enforcer in the Forgotten Lands, a world where lost objects come to life. The premise alone is intriguing, but the way the game explores themes of memory, purpose, and identity is truly impressive. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of platforming, light puzzle solving, and decision-making. The puzzles revolve around manipulating Anima, the energy that powers the Forgotten Lands, and they're satisfying without ever becoming frustrating. What really sets Forgotten Anne apart is its storytelling. The world building is top-notch, creating a place that feels both whimsical and melancholic. The characters you meet, from a sentient scarf to a rebellious teddy bear, are memorable and well-voiced, and the choices you make throughout the game have real consequences, affecting both the story and how other characters perceive Anne. The soundtrack deserves special mention. It's a beautiful orchestral score that perfectly complements the game's emotional beats. Forgotten Anne isn't a long game. You can finish it in about 6 to 8 hours, but it's an experience that'll stick with you. It's the kind of game that reminds you of the artistic potential of this medium. Alright, up next is the Red Strings Club. Set in a cyberpunk future, you play as 3 different characters. A bartender who can manipulate emotions through cocktails, an android with the power to craft personality-altering implants, and a hacker trying to uncover a corporate conspiracy. Sounds wild, right? It absolutely is, but in the best possible way. The gameplay is a mix of point-and-click adventure, mini-games, and dialogue choices. As the bartender, you'll be mixing drinks to influence conversations, trying to extract information from your patrons. The implant crafting sections are like a puzzle game, where you're shaping cybernetic enhancements to alter people's personalities. And the hacking sections. They're all about social engineering, manipulating people over the phone to get the information you need. The game tackles big questions about free will, the nature of happiness, and the ethics of technology. Every conversation is filled with choices that'll make you stop and think. And the best part is that there are no clear-cut right or wrong answers. The game respects your choices and follows through on their consequences. The pixel art style is gorgeous, capturing the neon-soaked cyberpunk aesthetic perfectly. Compared to the previous game, the Red Strings Club is on a bit shorter side. You can finish it in about 4 to 5 hours. If you're into cyberpunk, philosophical questions, or just want a game that'll make you think, the Red Strings Club is an absolute must-play. Up next, we have the adventure puzzle game, Rime. This game follows a young boy who washes up on a mysterious island, and from there, it's up to you to uncover the secrets of this strange place. The first thing that will hit you about Rime is its stunning visual style. It's like a watercolor painting inside a video game, with vibrant, sun-drenched environments that beg to be explored. The art style isn't just for show, as it plays a crucial role in guiding you through the game's puzzles and story beats. Speaking of puzzles, they're clever without ever becoming frustrating. You'll be manipulating light and shadow, sound, and perspective to progress. And each new mechanic is introduced in a way that feels natural and intuitive. But what really sets Rime apart is its emotional storytelling. Without a single word of dialogue, it manages to convey a deeply moving narrative about loss and acceptance. The way the story unfolds through environmental storytelling and visual metaphors is nothing short of masterful. And let's talk about that soundtrack. It's beautiful and perfectly complements the game's emotional journey. Rime is one of those rare games that you surely want to check if you want a compelling story. Next up, we've got Little Nightmares. Man, this game is a trip. You play as Sixth, a tiny character in a yellow raincoat, navigating through a twisted world that's both beautiful and terrifying. The atmosphere in this game is so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Every environment feels lived in and threatening, from the creaking floorboards to the looming shadows. The puzzles aren't brainbusters, but they're satisfying to solve. And the platforming feels just right. What really sets Little Nightmares apart is its storytelling. There's barely any dialogue, but the world itself tells a haunting story that'll stick with you long after you finish. And let's talk about those enemies. They're the stuff of nightmares. The way they move, the sounds they make, it's all designed to keep you on edge. If you're into atmospheric horror that doesn't rely on jump scares, you need to play this game. It's a short experience, about 3 to 4 hours, but it's so impactful that you'll be thinking about it for days. Next up is Observer System Redux, and trust me, this isn't your typical jump scare fest. Set in a cyberpunk version of Poland, you play as Daniel Lazarski, a neural detective who can hack into people's minds. The game is a masterclass in psychological horror, building tension through its oppressive atmosphere and mind-bending dream sequences. The world of Observer is incredibly detailed, with every neon-lit corridor and grimy apartment telling a story of a society on the brink. The way the game blends reality and digital hallucinations is particularly impressive, creating a sense of unease that never lets up. Gameplay-wise, it's a mix of investigation and stealth, with the mind-hacking sequences providing the most intense and surreal moments. These trips into unstable minds are where the game really shines, presenting fractured realities that are both beautiful and terrifying. The sound design deserves special mention. The way it builds tension and immerses you in both the physical and mental worlds is masterful. Observer isn't afraid to tackle and explore ideas of consciousness, identity, and the cost of technological progress. While Observer plunges you into a dystopian future, our next game, Perception, takes a completely different approach to creating fear. This unique horror experience puts you in the shoes of a blind woman named Cassie, who uses echolocation to see the world around her. This innovative mechanic creates a haunting, blue outlined world that constantly shifts and fades, adding a layer of tension to every moment. You're never quite sure what's lurking just beyond your perception. The game takes place in an abandoned mansion with a dark history, and as Cassie, you're there to uncover its secrets and confront the entity known as the Presence. The sound design in Perception is unsurprisingly exceptional. Every tap of Cassie's cane, every creak of a floorboard, every whisper of the wind contributes to building an atmosphere of dread. The story unfolds through multiple time periods, with Cassie experiencing the mansion's history through psychometric visions. It's a clever way to tell a complex narrative and keeps the gameplay fresh as the environment changes with each era. What I really appreciate about Perception is how it handles Cassie's blindness. It's not just a gimmick, it's an integral part of both the gameplay and the story, treated with respect and nuance. Now, I'll be honest, the actual horror elements can be hit or miss. The tension building is excellent, but the scares themselves aren't always as impactful as they could be. But don't let that deter you. Perception is a unique, atmospheric experience that horror fans shouldn't miss. If Perception's earthbound haunted house left you wanting more, Moons of Madness launches the horror into space, blending cosmic terror with sci-fi in a way that would make Lovecraft proud. Set on a Mars base, you play as Shane Newhart, an engineer dealing with some serious psychological stress and also eldritch horrors from beyond space and time. You know, typical Tuesday on Mars. The game does an excellent job of building tension, starting with subtle oddities and slowly ramping up to full-blown cosmic horror. The Martian setting is used to great effect, with the isolation of space adding to the feeling of helplessness. Visually, Moons of Madness is stunning. The Martian landscapes are beautifully realized, and the way the game portrays Shane's deteriorating mental state is both artistic and unsettling. For its gameplay, it's a mix of exploration, puzzle solving, and some light stealth sections. The puzzles are well integrated into the environment and the story, never feeling like arbitrary roadblocks. The storytelling is also great. It weaves together Lovecraftian horror, sci-fi tropes, and personal trauma in a way that feels fresh and engaging. If you're a fan of cosmic horror or just want a sci-fi game that goes beyond the usual alien shooter fare, Moons of Madness is definitely worth your time. Moons of Madness might have taken us to Mars, but our next game, Syndrome, proves that sometimes the most terrifying frontier is the cold emptiness of deep space. Set aboard a seemingly abandoned spaceship, Syndrome channels the claustrophobic terror of classics like Dead Space and System Shock. You wake up from cryosleep to find most of the crew dead and the survivors changed. The game does an excellent job of building tension from the get-go. The ship feels oppressive and dangerous, with tight corridors and flickering lights creating a constant sense of unease. The sound design is particularly effective, with every distant clang or inhuman screech setting your nerves on edge. Syndrome presents the old-school survival horror. Resources are scarce, enemies are tough, and running is often your best option. The combat, when you do engage in it, feels weighty and desperate. Syndrome's focus on player choice is what makes this game unique. These choices, along with a branching narrative, give the game replay value beyond a single playthrough. Visually, the game is impressive, especially for an indie title. The detailed environments and unsettling enemy designs contribute greatly to the atmosphere. Surely, this game is one of the rare games that you should play if you're a horror fan. Syndrome's claustrophobic horror might have your heart racing, but if you're looking to shift gears while keeping your mind engaged, the Swapper offers a different kind of tension, trading jump scares for mind-bending puzzles. This atmospheric platformer challenges you to navigate a derelict space station using your own clones. You're on an abandoned space station, armed with a device that lets you create clones of yourself and swap between them. Sounds simple, right? But the way this mechanic is used for both puzzles and storytelling is nothing short of genius. The puzzles start off straightforward, but quickly ramp up in complexity. You'll be creating multiple clones, swapping between them in midair, and using them to reach seemingly impossible places. It's the kind of game that makes you feel like a genius when you solve a particularly tricky room. The game tackles some heavy philosophical themes about consciousness and identity, and it does it in a way that's both thought-provoking and unsettling. The visuals are stunning, with environments crafted from clay models and everyday objects, giving the game a unique, handmade feel. And the sound design? It's perfect. The sparse use of music and the echoing sounds of the space station create a sense of isolation that's palpable. If you're into sci-fi that makes you think, wrapped up in challenging gameplay, the Swapper is a must-play. Next up, we have Black the Fall. This game flew under a lot of people's radars, but it's a gem that deserves more attention. Set in a communist dystopia, you play as a machinist trying to escape an oppressive industrial complex. The first thing that will hit you is the atmosphere. It's bleak, oppressive, and incredibly effective. The game uses a limited color palette, mostly blacks and reds, to create a world that feels suffocating and dangerous. It's a puzzle platformer that'll test both your brain and your reflexes. You'll be manipulating machinery, avoiding guards, and using a laser pointer, which becomes way more useful than you'd think to progress. What I love about Black the Fall is how it tells its story through the environment. There's no dialogue, no cutscenes. Everything you learn about this world comes from what you see and experience. And let me tell you, it's a brutal world. The puzzles can be challenging, sometimes frustratingly so, but they're always satisfying to solve. And as you progress, the game opens up both in terms of environments and storytelling. It's not a long game, but it's one that'll stick with you. If you're into dystopian settings and games that make you think, both in terms of puzzles and themes, Black the Fall is definitely worth your time. From the oppressive industrial settings of Black the Fall, the gardens between feels like a breath of fresh air. This time-bending puzzle game swaps gritty realism for whimsical, dreamlike islands filled with oversized everyday objects, exploring themes of childhood friendship and memory. You control two friends, Arena and Frent, as they navigate surreal islands filled with objects from their shared memories. The twist? You're not directly controlling the characters, but the flow of time itself. Moving time forward and backward is the key to solving puzzles and progressing through the story. The art style is absolutely gorgeous, with each island being a vibrant, dreamlike landscape filled with oversized everyday objects. What really struck me about this game is how it uses its time manipulation mechanic to explore themes of memory and growing up. As you progress, you'll uncover moments from Arena and Frent's friendship, both joyful and bittersweet. The puzzles are clever and satisfying to solve, gradually increasing in complexity without ever becoming frustrating. It's not a long game. You can finish it in about 3 to 4 hours, but it's an experience that'll stick with you long after the credits roll. Next on the list is Creaks. This game is a masterclass in atmospheric storytelling and clever puzzle design. You play as a young man who discovers a vast, mysterious world hidden behind his bedroom wall, populated by bird-like creatures and menacing mechanical monsters. The first thing that strikes you about Creaks is its stunning hand-drawn art style. The animation is smooth and characterful, bringing the strange inhabitants of this world to life. Gameplay-wise, Creaks is all about manipulating light and shadow to solve puzzles. The mechanical monsters that threaten you can be turned into harmless furniture by shining light on them, and much of the game revolves around cleverly using this mechanic. The puzzles start simple, but gradually increase in complexity. But what's impressive is how organic the difficulty curve feels. New concepts are introduced naturally through gameplay rather than explicit tutorials. While there's no dialogue, the story is told through the environment and occasional wordless comic panels. It's open to interpretation, but themes of overcoming fear and the power of curiosity run throughout. And take note that Creaks can be completed within 7 to 8 hours. If you're looking for a puzzle game with a unique atmosphere and clever mechanics, Creaks is definitely worth your time. And speaking of unique atmospheres, Seventh Sector plunges us into a cyberpunk dystopia that'll make you feel like you're in a digital fever dream. This puzzle platformer starts you off as a mere spark of electricity in a TV, and from there, You'll travel through power lines, machines, and even robots as you uncover the secrets of an oppressive city. The game paints a picture of a grim, oppressive future through its detailed pixel art and ambient sound design. The city feels alive, or perhaps more accurately, barely alive, with subtle background animations and environmental storytelling. Seventh Sector is all about solving puzzles to progress. These range from simple logic puzzles to more complex scenarios involving timing, physics, and even some light programming. The way you traverse the environment is unique too. As a spark of electricity, you can jump between power lines and machines, giving you a unique perspective on the world. Later, you'll inhabit other forms, each with their own abilities and limitations. The story of Seventh Sector is subtle but intriguing. There's no dialogue or text. Everything is conveyed through the environment and your actions. It touches on themes of surveillance, control, and rebellion, but leaves much open to interpretation. Seventh Sector isn't an easy game. Some puzzles can be quite challenging, but it's always fair. If you're looking for a puzzle game that'll make you think and immerse you in a richly detailed world, Seventh Sector is definitely worth checking out. But if you thought those puzzles were mind-bending, just wait until you step into the clinical chambers of our final game on this list. Cube 2 takes the spatial reasoning of 7th Sector and takes it to the next level. This first-person puzzler puts you in the shoes of Amelia Cross, an archaeologist who wakes up in a strange alien world with no memory of how she got there. Armed with a pair of high-tech gloves, you have to navigate through a series of increasingly complex puzzle rooms to find your way home. The core mechanic of Cube 2 revolves around manipulating colored cubes in the environment. You can create bounce pads, extend platforms, create blocks, and more. The difficulty of this game is beautifully balanced, consistently challenging you without ever feeling unfair. Cube 2 has a stark, minimalist aesthetic of the puzzle rooms contrasts beautifully with the lush alien environments you glimpse between sections. The lighting and particle effects are particularly impressive, but what really sets Cube 2 apart from its predecessor is its story. Without spoiling anything, it's a narrative that keeps you guessing, touching on themes of isolation, trust, and the nature of reality itself. Cube 2 might be short, taking only 6 to 8 hours to complete, but it's an experience that will leave a lasting impression. And there you have it, folks. 20 games that you absolutely need to experience at least once. Remember, gaming isn't just about the latest AAA blockbusters. Some of the most memorable experiences come from these hidden gems. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And hey, drop a comment below with your favorite overlooked game. Thanks for watching.